The Merchant of Baghdad. In the heart of ancient Baghdad, where the Tigris River flowed like a silver ribbon through the city, lived a man known not just for his riches, but for his character. His name was Haji Umar, and though he owned caravans that stretched from Damascus to Delhi, and his warehouses overflowed with silks, spices, and jewels, it was said that his greatest wealth was his honor. Unlike other merchants who flaunted their fortunes, Umar dressed modestly, gave freely, and never allowed greed to stain his dealings. He employed hundreds, but mistreated none. Widows came to his door without shame. Orphans left his gates with full bellies. Still, those closest to him whispered of one mystery. Why had he never married? Surely a man of your standing must have a wife, his mother urged one evening, pouring him sweet tea as they sat in the garden under the stars. Even the caliph's niece has shown interest. Umar smiled gently, but his eyes drifted to the moon above. "Mother," he said, "my heart waits for someone who is not yet of this world." She shook her head with a sigh, not knowing what he meant. But Umar knew. Each night, for many years, he had dreamed of a woman. She stood in a garden bathed in moonlight, her eyes golden as the desert sun, her hair flowing like midnight wind, and wings of starlight rising from her back. In these dreams, she spoke his name with a voice like a forgotten melody. Umar. He had never seen her awake, and yet he loved her with a certainty that defied reason. She felt real, more real than all the gold in his coffers. One autumn evening, Umar prepared for a journey east to Samarra, where a new shipment awaited. But strange omens had begun. The camels balked. The sky turned an odd shade of bronze. His advisors warned against traveling. "Stay, master," one begged. "A sandstorm is coming." But Umar's dreams had grown stronger, and now he saw a desert oasis he had never visited before, and the woman standing there, reaching for him. He rode out with only one servant, and by dusk the storm struck. Wind roared across the dunes like a beast, and sand stung like fire. They lost their bearings, and his servant's camel stumbled, breaking its leg. Umar sent him back to the last outpost with supplies, insisting he would find shelter and return by morning. Alone, half blind from the storm, Umar pressed forward. Just as exhaustion threatened to take him, the winds ceased. Before him, lit by moonlight, stood an oasis, a hidden lake surrounded by tall palms. It shimmered with an unnatural glow, and there she stood, just as in his dreams, golden-eyed, radiant, and impossibly still. Her wings shimmered faintly, now faded, like smoke after fire. "Umar," she whispered. "You came." He stepped forward, breath caught in his throat. "Who are you?" "I am Laila," she said, her voice trembling with joy and sorrow. "A child of the jinn, bound by ancient magic. Long have I waited, calling across dreams, for one whose heart was pure enough to find me." He stared in wonder, unable to speak. She touched his cheek, and the years of searching melted into that single moment. "You are real," he murmured. "Yes, but not for long. The curse that binds me holds me between worlds. My soul called to yours, and your kindness gave me strength. But unless the curse is broken by the next full moon, I will fade forever." Umar's jaw clenched. "Tell me what to do." She hesitated. "3 trials must you pass: compassion, truth, and sacrifice. These are not tests of might, but of the soul. Only then will I be free, and only then can we be together." Umar nodded without question. "I will face whatever comes." A tear slipped from her eye, gleaming like crystal. "I feared you would not come, but you are exactly as I saw, a man of trade who does not trade his heart." She placed her palm over his. Warmth bloomed between them, not of flesh, but of spirit. The oasis shimmered again. "Go now," she said, "and listen to the signs. They will find you." Before he could speak again, the wind returned, howling with rage. The oasis vanished. He stood alone in the sand, but his heart no longer doubted. The trials had begun. The 3 trials of the soul. The desert returned Umar to Baghdad, not with sand in his cloak, but with purpose in his soul. The memory of Laila, radiant and sorrowful, stayed with him through every prayer and breath. The city moved as it always had. Merchants haggled, beggars pleaded, and camels grumbled under their burdens. But for Umar, the world had shifted. She had said, "3 trials must you pass: compassion, truth, and sacrifice." He did not know when or how they would come, but he trusted they would. The first trial, compassion. It began with a man named Kadir, a rival merchant who once tried to sabotage Umar's spice route by bribing guards and spreading false rumors of spoiled goods. Kadir had been banished from the guild and disappeared, and Umar, while not vengeful, had long buried that chapter. One morning, as Umar returned from prayer at the mosque, he saw a small crowd near the riverbank. Curious, he approached and saw a wounded man lying on a broken cart, fevered, filthy, and clinging to life. "Bandits," someone muttered. "Serves him right." Another added, "He tried to cheat Haji Umar years ago." But Umar stepped forward. The man was Kadir. His face was sunken, and his breath came in shallow gasps. His eyes flickered open, only for a moment. "Let him die," someone whispered. But Umar knelt beside him. "Prepare my guest house," he told his servant. "Bring clean water and a physician." Despite protests, Umar carried Kadir in his own arms. He nursed him for 3 days, changing bandages and feeding him with his own hands. When Kadir recovered enough to speak, his first words were tears. "Why?" he asked. "I tried to ruin you." Umar only said, "You were in need." That was enough. Kadir would later leave Baghdad and never return, but not before leaving a small chest at Umar's door, filled with documents, maps, and a letter confessing where bandits hid along the trade routes. It would save dozens of lives in the months to come. That night, Laila came to Umar in a dream. Her eyes shone. "You showed compassion to one who had harmed you," she said. "You have passed the first trial. The second trial, truth." A few weeks later, a caravan returned with strange news. A traveler had entered the city gates wearing blue robes lined with fire, claiming to be a jinn trader bearing gifts. Umar met the man in his courtyard, and indeed, there was something otherworldly about him. His eyes glinted silver, and he carried no shadow. He placed a black velvet box on the table. "In this," the jinn said, "is a gem that will make you the richest man alive. It will bend markets, silence enemies, and grant your name eternal fame. All I ask is one thing." Umar raised a brow. "And that is?" "Swear, before all present, that you no longer love the fairy woman named Laila." The air grew cold. Umar did not hesitate. "Then take your gem and go." The jinn narrowed his eyes. "You would refuse this for a fading dream? She is more real than all your treasures," Umar said, "and I will never trade truth for gold." With a hiss, the jinn vanished, the box crumbling to dust. In its place lay a single rose petal, glowing. That night, in the courtyard under a pale moon, Laila appeared once more. "You chose truth over power," she whispered. "You have passed the second trial. The third trial, sacrifice. Of all the trials, this came the hardest." Umar awoke one dawn to the sound of bells and shouting. A fire had broken out in the poor district. By midday, 50 homes were gone. Children cried for parents. Families huddled in ashes. Umar walked through the wreckage, and for the first time in years, felt powerless. His wealth could help, but it would take all of it. To rebuild, to house, to feed, to heal, everything would be required. He went home and opened every chest, every account, and deed. Then, before a stunned crowd in the city square, he announced that all his fortune would be used to restore the district. His palace would be converted into an orphanage and school. His warehouses would be emptied. He kept only one robe and a ring his father had given him. People wept. Some called him mad. But Umar felt lighter than he had ever felt. That night, as he stood alone beside the Tigris, Laila appeared. This time, not as a vision, but fully, beautifully real. Her feet touched the earth. Her wings flickered, then vanished like mist. She stepped toward him, smiling with eyes filled with light. "You have given all," she said, "not for reward, but for love. The curse is broken." Umar reached for her hand. It was warm, solid. "You're here," he whispered. "I am yours," she replied. "And now, we face the world together. The Sultan's temptation. Word of Umar's transformation spread like wind through Baghdad. The merchant who had once possessed vast caravans now lived in a small home near the city's orphan quarter. Yet he was loved more than ever. People saw not a fallen man, but a risen soul. And beside him walked Laila, the woman of moonlit beauty and celestial grace. Though she wore no jewels, her presence turned heads. Though she spoke softly, her words carried wisdom older than the city's stones. No one could explain her origin, only that when she looked at you, you felt seen. But such beauty, in such times, rarely went unnoticed by power. In the palace of golden domes, the Sultan of Baghdad, a ruler proud and ruthless, sat upon his throne with narrowed eyes as his vizier whispered of Laila. They say she descended from the heavens, the vizier said, and that she walks beside Umar as his bride-to-be. The Sultan, a man drunk on admiration and power, felt a hunger rise in him, not of love, but of possession. If she truly is divine, he said coldly, then she belongs not with a beggar, but with a king. Within days, royal guards arrived at Umar's door. By order of the Sultan, the captain declared, Lady Laila is invited to the palace. A guest of honor. Umar stepped forward. She is not yours to summon. She is not yours to hide, the guard snapped. Disobedience is treason. Laila placed a calming hand on Umar's shoulder. Let me go, she said softly. Truth must face power. Umar clenched his fists but nodded. If you go, I go with you. Together, they entered the palace, walking past towering marble statues and silken curtains, past gold-tiled fountains and halls echoing with flute music. The Sultan awaited them in the great hall, surrounded by courtiers and guards. He rose from his throne with a practiced smile. So, this is the angel of Baghdad, he said. Come closer. Laila stepped forward, calm as still water. I am no angel, only a woman who has seen many worlds. The Sultan's smile twisted. Then let me show you mine. Stay here, in this palace. Wear silks and emeralds. Eat at golden tables. Be queen of Baghdad. I belong with Umar, she said plainly. The Sultan's eyes darkened. You would choose a merchant who gave away his wealth? A man who walks in dust. I would choose the man who gave, not the dust, she answered. Rage flashed in his gaze. Then he shall not walk at all. He turned to his guards. Imprison him. Umar was seized. Laila cried out, but the guards formed a wall between them. Umar was dragged to the palace dungeon, stone, damp, and lightless. Alone in the cold cell, Umar did not curse the Sultan, nor fear for himself. He prayed, quietly, and tended to fellow prisoners who moaned in pain. Soon, even the guards began to greet him with respect, bringing him extra bread and bandages. Above in the gilded halls, the Sultan attempted to charm Laila with feasts, dancers, and even magical illusions conjured by palace sorcerers. But she never smiled. On the third night, she asked to sing in the courtyard beneath the stars. Curious, the Sultan agreed. Laila stood under the moon. Her face lifted and began to sing. Not a song of this world, but one older, filled with notes that shimmered like wind through crystal. The palace seemed to pause. Time stilled. And far below, in his cell, Umar heard her voice. Chains rusted and fell. Doors unlocked with soft clicks. Guards fell into deep slumber. Umar stepped into the moonlight of the courtyard, just as Layla's final note faded. Their eyes met. The Sultan stood in disbelief. What sorcery is this? From the shadows, an old man in tattered robes stepped forward. No one had seen him enter. His eyes shone with ageless light. Not sorcery, the old man said, but truth. He turned to the court. You call yourself a ruler, yet you steal what is freely given. You call yourself wise, yet you cannot see love when it stands before you. The Sultan stammered. Who are you to speak so in my presence? I am no one, the old man said. But tonight the people shall speak. And they did. From the gates came thousands, merchants, beggars, scholars, widows, all those Umar had helped. They filled the palace grounds, chanting not in anger, but in unity. Let them go, they said. The Sultan looked out at the sea of people and saw the truth. He was powerful, yes, but not loved. He turned to Laila and Umar. Go, and may you never return. But Laila stepped forward once more. May you learn to love not for gain, she said, but for grace. The Sultan said nothing more. As the palace gates closed behind them, Laila and Umar walked into the night, not as fugitives, but as souls freed not just from magic, but from the chains of pride and fear. The garden beyond the dunes. Umar and Laila left the city of Baghdad not in shame, but in peace. Though they walked without guards or gold, they carried with them something greater, freedom. Freedom from power, from fear, and from every chain the world had once tried to wrap around their hearts. They traveled not by map, but by the call of something deep and unseen. Laila said little at first, only that there was a place her heart remembered, a garden hidden beyond the dunes, where the stars touched the earth and time moved gently. And so they journeyed, through olive groves and barren hills, across dry riverbeds and windswept plains. Villagers greeted them with warmth, offering bread and stories in exchange for nothing but their company. Umar worked when needed, mending carts, reading letters for the old, helping dig wells, while Laila healed the sick with touch and word, her eyes still holding that ancient light. One evening, after many weeks, they reached a ridge just as the sun dipped low, setting the sky ablaze with gold and rose. There, Laila whispered, pointing to a shimmering oasis in the valley below. That is where my story began, and where ours will continue. It was not like any other oasis. The air shimmered as if touched by unseen threads of magic. Water sparkled in the moonlight before the moon even rose. Trees bore blossoms that opened only when sung to. And in the center stood a single stone arch, half buried by time, carved with symbols Umar could not read. This was once the meeting place between realms, Laila said. Long ago, when the jinn and humankind walked more closely. But when greed and fear grew, the gate was sealed. I was born here between both worlds, and cursed here by those who feared love between spirit and mortal. Umar placed a hand on the stone. It was warm, humming faintly. Can it be opened again? It already is, she said, smiling. Because love, freely given, is the key. That night, they built a simple home near the water's edge, woven from palms and stone, with a garden that Laila coaxed to life with her laughter. Birds gathered where she walked. Children from nearby villages began to visit, drawn by tales of the fairy woman and the kind man who once gave away a fortune. But it wasn't riches they found there. It was something rarer, a place where people were listened to, where stories mattered, where no one asked her name before offering tea, and a place to rest. Years passed, but Umar did not age as other men did. And Laila, once bound by time and curse, now lived freely, her essence grounded in the world she had once only touched through dreams. One quiet morning, Umar stood beneath the stone arch, watching the sunrise. Laila joined him, wrapping her fingers through his. I dreamed of you long before I knew what dreaming was, she said. And I waited for you long after I stopped believing in fate, he replied. There was a silence between them, deep in content. But fate, it seemed, was not yet done. That very day, a rider arrived in dust and haste. He was a messenger from Baghdad. The Sultan is dying, he said. He calls for you. He has renounced the throne. The city is to choose a new leader, and the people speak your name. Umar looked at Laila. For a long time, neither spoke. Then she said, You once gave all to save a city. Perhaps now it needs you again. He nodded, but not as a ruler, as a guide. And so, for the first time in years, Umar and Laila returned to the city they had left behind. But this time, they were not visitors or prisoners. They were welcomed as symbols, not of power, but of purpose. Umar refused the crown. Instead, he helped the people build a council, where voice and wisdom mattered more than gold or bloodline. He stayed only long enough to ensure the city's wounds were healed, then returned to the garden, where Laila waited under the stars. In time, their oasis became a sanctuary for travelers, seekers, poets, and pilgrims. Some claim miracles happened there. Others said they saw the gate glow faintly at night. or that birds learned to speak in dreams. But those who truly listened understood. The miracle was not in magic, but in love, lived gently and fully. Umar and Laila never sought greatness, and yet their love became legend, not because it conquered kingdoms, but because it healed hearts. It was proof that when compassion is chosen over revenge, truth over gain, and sacrifice over comfort, something eternal takes root. And in the hidden garden beyond the dunes, where the stars still bend low to kiss the earth, that eternity blooms still.